All right, good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Speaking of welcoming aboard, our Deputy Secretary General is in Washington, D.C. today, where she's attending the fall meetings of the World Bank IMF. She's doing that on behalf of the Secretary General. While there, she will engage in discussions with finance ministers, leaders of the international financial institutions, and multilateral development banks to advance the commitments from the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. Earlier this morning, she spoke at the 4th G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting, where she welcomed the G20 Africa Engagement Framework proposed by South Africa's Presidency. She also spoke alongside Prime Minister Mottley of Barbados at an event on international cooperation to deliver reforms of the international financial architecture. This afternoon, we expect Ms. Mohammed to speak at the 112th meeting of the World Bank IMF Development Committee ministerial level, where she will highlight the United Nations' strong partnership with the bank and the International Monetary Fund. She will also reiterate our call on accelerating the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals over the remaining 5 years. She will be back in New York tomorrow morning. Turning to the situation in Gaza, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, while traveling from Cairo to Rafah, spoke how vital that route is as a lifeline for life-saving aid going into Gaza. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs notes that supplies from Egypt still need to take a long detour and be inspected at the Israeli side of the Karim Shalom crossing, pending the opening of the Rafah crossing for more direct access. Mr. Fletcher stressed the need for all the crossings to open to allow for a massive scale-up and start turning the situation on the ground around. Speaking from Cairo yesterday, he underscored that humanitarian teams have been preparing for this moment and now need sufficient access to deliver large amounts of assistance that are needed. Humanitarian community cannot deliver at the scale necessary without international NGO presence and engagement. Currently, the Israeli authorities do not issue visas for a number of international NGOs and do not authorize many of them to send supplies into Gaza. That being said, humanitarian teams inside Gaza continue to make the most out of the opportunities afforded to them by the ongoing ceasefire. To give you some examples, on Tuesday alone, 21 of our partners distributed nearly 960,000 meals through 175 kitchens. Bakeries that we support produced over 100,000 2-kilogram bread bundles. UNICEF distributed more than 1 million baby diapers, and the World Health Organization delivered 3 truckloads of surgical and other essential medical supplies from their warehouses in Deir el-Balah to the central pharmacy in Gaza City. Our WHO director, Dr. Tedros, said that those medical supplies will be transferred to Al-Shifa Hospital and will meet the needs of about 10,000 people. WHO also deployed an international emergency medical team to boost orthopedic surgery and trauma care in Gaza, and their team set up 2 new operating theaters, and they're planning to add 120 more inpatient beds to Al-Shifa to expand the hospital's capacity. OCHA also tells us that teams from across the UN system have now finished clearing the main roads leading to the Erez and Zikim crossings in the north in anticipation of their potential reopening, which would allow, of course, aid to be brought in directly into northern Gaza, where it is desperately needed. Today, we have teams checking the Saladin Road, which has not been used for months. Also on Tuesday, we had colleagues from multiple UN agencies visit the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood in Gaza City, which was severely impacted by the recent military operations. And our teams also met there with returnees and with those who have remained all along, and heard from them how determined they are to rebuild their lives. Their main humanitarian priority was access to water alongside food, shelter, and the removal of debris. Those who've lost their homes were staying in tents, while those who returned to homes that were still inhabitable have begun clearing rubble and cleaning up. Meanwhile, over the past week, our colleagues from the UN 2720 mechanism have secured Israeli clearance for additional supplies, raising our cleared pipeline to nearly 200,000 metric tons. The items are currently in Jordan, Cyprus, Israel, and the West Bank, and they're on their way into Gaza. We also will keep sending even more supplies to the Kesufim and Kerim Shalom crossings, offloading them there and collecting them from inside Gaza. Yesterday, through the 2720 mechanism, our teams and partners sent wheat, flour, food parcels, nutrition supplements, date bars, food supplies for kitchens, hygiene kits, sanitary pads, diapers, various medical equipment, tents, and animal fodder. Between Friday and Tuesday, our teams have been able to collect nearly 3,500 metric tons of essential supplies from those crossings. That's based on the mechanism's tracking, and those efforts continue as we speak. Turning to Afghanistan and Pakistan, as we've been asked a number of questions, I can tell you that the Secretary General has been following with concern the reports of armed clashes between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which have killed or injured many civilians, and he, of course, welcomes the announcement of a temporary ceasefire. The Secretary General calls on the parties to agree to a durable end and to the fighting, and to engage in dialogue so that civilians can be protected and to prevent further loss of life. Our colleagues at the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, continue to monitor the situation. The UN mission is still assessing the exact number of killed or injured. Current information, however, indicates at least 17 civilians were killed and 346 injured in Spin Boldak on the Afghanistan side of the border. The UN mission also documented at least 16 civilian casualties as a result of an earlier cross-border clash in Paktikta, Patkaya, Kunar, and Helmand provinces. The UN mission reminds all parties of their obligations under international law to comply with the key principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution to prevent harm to civilians. Also, just turning to Cameroon, I can tell you that the Secretary General has been following the 12 October presidential elections and subsequent developments in Cameroon. He calls on all stakeholders to help maintain peaceful environment and encourages all actors to address any electoral disputes through the established legal mechanisms. Turning to Madagascar, and I have a statement to share with you, and that is that the Secretary General condemns the unconstitutional change of government power in Madagascar and calls for the return to constitutional order and the rule of law. He takes note of the decision taken by the Peace and Security Committee of the African Union to immediately suspend the country from participation in all activities of the African Union, its organs and institutions, until constitutional order is restored in the country. The Secretary General encourages all Malagasy stakeholders, including the youth, to work together to address the underlying causes of instability in Madagascar. He reiterates the availability of the United Nations to support these national efforts towards the attainment of that goal in collaboration with the African Union and the Southern African Development Community and other international partners. Just on the humanitarian front, to remind you that in recent years, Madagascar has faced an El Nino-induced drought, multiple cyclones, and locust infestations that have devastated crops. A malaria outbreak earlier this year has further strained an already fragile health system. According to our colleagues and partners on the ground, nearly 29,000 people are experiencing emergency levels of hunger. That's IPC 4 phase, and now those people are in the Grand Sud region of Madagascar. This figure is projected to soar to 110,000 by 2026, with malnutrition, disease outbreaks continuing to escalate. Funding cuts have further constrained the UN's ability to respond. 2 days we celebrate today. Today is, what 2 days do we want to mark? Exactly, World Food Day. And the Food and Agriculture Organization today marked the occasion at its 80th anniversary with a landmark event in Rome hosted by the FAO director, Q Dong-Q, and attended by global figures, including His Holiness Pope Leo XIV and the President of the Italian Republic. This year's theme, Hand in Hand for a Better Food and a Better Future, calls for global solidarity. In a video message to the event, the Secretary General warned that 80 years after nations united to defeat hunger, progress is stalling. Today, 673 million people still go to bed hungry. Hunger is even being weaponized in conflicts. He called for unity and solidarity to build food systems and nourish all people and protect the planet. What is the other day we celebrate today? It's not an international day, it's a national day. It's National Boss Day. Boss Day. And Boss Day. And my office was very nice to mark the day. And I honor my boss, the Secretary General. And you should all honor your bosses. I don't know if Abdelhamid is online, but I have a response to what he raised yesterday, and that is that the two Moroccan citizens who he questioned their whereabouts.
I am online, yes,
okay.
Thank you.
So good. Abdelhamid, just to let you know that in answer to your question, the two Moroccan citizens who had been on board the flotilla to Gaza, in fact, according to the information we have, were returned back to Casablanca on Sunday, so they are home. And I have a quiz for you today. What is the world's largest producer of frankincense? Frankincense. Frankincense and myrrh. Yeah, but just frankincense. We're not talking about myrrh. It's a spice. What is the largest producer? What? No, so the largest producer is Somalia. Exactly. But that's not who paid its dues today. Today, the world's second largest producer of frankincense. And what country is that? Exactly. Frankincense, which is a fragrant tree resin known for its use in incense and traditional medicine. And in fact, Oman hosts the land of frankincense, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So we say thank you to our friends in Muscat for having paid their dues in full, 141 member states. Chris, I don't think you have a question, but if you do, no? We'll go to Edie then.
Thank you, Steph. Going back to Gaza, you talked about 975,000 meals being distributed, over 1 million diapers, and 3,500 metric tons. Mm-hmm. But can you give us the figures of how many trucks have gotten into Gaza Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yes and no. We are still, I think, we still don't have the system in place for various reasons that will give us our own numbers on trucks. I can tell you that COGAT presented to the media yesterday that 716 trucks had crossed through Israeli controlled crossings. That was yesterday. Those numbers reflect trucks sent through commercial sector, bilateral donations, and the UN system combined. Our estimate is about a third of that 716 were UN coordinated trucks, so that would be about 230 or so. But those are figures given to us by the Israeli COGAT. As I said, I hope in the coming days we'll have a system in place where we can get our own numbers.
And do you have any information on whether trucks are still being looted as they go to warehouses?
The information that we received today in our update is that WFP managed to get a full convoy of trucks to a warehouse without any incidents. We have seen the incidents of looting drop dramatically. And I think today and yesterday was a vast improvement in our ability to bring aid in safely from the crossings to the warehouses. Deji, and then we'll go to you.
Yeah, on the situation between U.S. and Venezuela, there's another escalation. Yesterday, President Trump said he has approved CIA covert operation in Venezuela, and there might be also an attack on land. We all know what it means when we talk about CIA covert operation in Latin America. What is the response from the Secretary General on the latest escalation?
Look, we've obviously, we've seen the press reports, the article in the New York Times, we've seen some of the comments that are made. I think it's important that member states foster an atmosphere of constructive engagement to deal with bilateral issues. It is also imperative that member states ensure that their actions are carried out in accordance with international law, including the UN Charter.
Has the Secretary General received any letters or complaint from the Venezuelan mission?
Not,
on this issue?
not as of this morning that I know of, but something may pop up, and I will let you know. Okay. Yes, ma'am, and now I'll go to you.
Hi, Steph. Marina Usher with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Just wondering if you can go back to Mr. Fletcher's movements. I know he's on his way to the Rafah crossing. Curious about if you know how long Mr. Fletcher will be in Rafah and what his plans are about going into Gaza?
He is, he's currently in Rafah. I think he'll stay in the region for a few more days. If there's any news about him going in to Gaza, we will share that with you. Evelyn, your microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Sorry, just a second. Hello, Steph. Thank you. What was the problem with Israel rejecting NGOs? Which NGOs is that, and why?
I think you need to ask them, but there were a number of international NGOs who were no longer certified to work in Gaza.
We don't know which.
You'd have to ask the Israelis. Yes, sir. And then
Thank you, Steph. Vice President Trump is scheduled to meet Ukrainian president tomorrow, and they will possibly discuss the United States providing Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. And the Kremlin spokesperson Peskov warned today that if the United States provide Tomahawk to Ukraine, there might be a escalation of situation in Ukraine. So is the United States concerned about the possible escalation? And does the SG has any plan to talk to Putin and Trump about this issue? Thank you.
I will keep you abreast of any phone calls, but I can tell I'm not going to predict what will be said or done following the meeting. We will stick to our position, which is working for and wanting to see an end to the conflict, leading to a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in line with the Charter of the United Nations, relevant international law, relevant UN resolutions, and the territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Thank you. And I have another question about the World Food Day. Yesterday, the World Food Program said 319 million people face acute food insecurity. And today you said, the SG said 673 million people go to bed hungry every day. The figures are a bit confusing. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, I mean, I think WFP was talking from a much more technical standpoint of food insecurity. Going to bed hungry is just a fact that people may not have access to food that day, may not have food for 2 days. But I think one is a much broader figure and one is a much more technical figure. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. Does the SG have any comments on reports that the Houthis in Yemen announced today their military chief was killed, with Israel claiming responsibilities for the strike?
No, but we did see, I mean, I think we spoke about those strikes when they happened, but we also did see the very public accusations by the Houthi leadership against our UN staff, and I can tell you that we categorically reject any and all accusations that UN personnel or UN operations in Yemen were involved in any form of espionage or in any activities that was not consistent with our humanitarian mandate. The accusations are extremely disturbing. They're extremely worrying coming from the leadership, and accusations, calling UN staff spies, or we've seen in other contexts calling them terrorists. All that does is it puts the lives of UN staff everywhere at risk, and it's unacceptable. We have been calling, and we will continue to call for the end to the arbitrary detention of 53 of our colleagues. Some have been held without contact for many years. They need to be released alongside the NGO workers and those from diplomatic missions. And I can tell you that the work that we do in Yemen, and we do everywhere where we do humanitarian work, is guided by our basic principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. And in Yemen, the reason we're in Yemen, the reason our humanitarian colleagues are in Yemen, is to help the Yemeni people. Full stop. Yes, Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. Reports out of Gaza indicate that numerous of the remains of Palestinians that have been turned over to Gaza from Israel show clear signs of torture. Blindfold, hands tied, even some cases of being run over by vehicles. Is the UN planning any sort of investigation to document any of these?
Look, all these reports are extremely concerning, and as we've said many times, there will need to be accountability for all the violations of international law we've seen during this conflict.
And Israel has extended the detention of the former director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, Hussam Abu Safia. They've extended his detention at least for another 6 months under a so-called unlawful combatants law. Does the UN continue to call for his release?
Indeed we do. Okay, we'll go online. Iftikhar?
Thank you, Jeff. In addition to his statement on clashes between Afghanistan and Pakistan, has the Secretary General been in touch with the leaders of the two countries?
He has not, but obviously our mission on the ground is in touch and is in touch.
I hope you are posting this statement online.
Yes, sir, we will. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Steph. Gabriel asked one of my questions. My second question is about the 3 Palestinians were killed also today in Gaza. Yesterday there were 3, and the other there were 5. So Israel, in fact, is not abiding by the ceasefire. Do you have anything to say about that?
As I said yesterday, we are not a mediator in this conflict. We are not the ones who will call violations of the agreement. We do not want to see any more civilians killed. We do not want to see any fighting at this point. Okay, thank you all. Enjoy the day. Enjoy tomorrow, because it's Friday. Goodbye.